Good morning from Glenwood Lutheran Church. My name is Pastor Mark Manning, bringing you this weekly video devotional. And as I do, you may wonder why I look a little bit tired. It's because I am. This last Saturday, our daughter Britta was married to Sam Gates in Rochester, and so we're still kind of coming back from all that. It was a wonderful time that we had together there as they started their married life together. Well, as we prepare for this coming Sunday, we're going to hear in our Old Testament lesson from Deuteronomy and the institution of, I shouldn't say institution, but the reinforcement of the Sabbath day. And so today I want to just talk about what Sabbath means. Maybe more of a history and explanation than a sermon. Sabbath, according to the way the Jews understand it, is a perpetual covenant that God made with the Israelites in Exodus chapter 31. It's both a reminder of the rest that God enjoyed on the seventh day of creation, of the act of creating, and also a reminder of the work and the deliverance that God gave the people of Israel in bringing them out of slavery in the land of Egypt, chosen as God's people, for a new covenant and a new life in this land called Israel. Sabbaths are observed in many different ways and by different cultures and religious groups. Obviously, Judaism is a prime observer of Sabbath, but also there are also Christians, Sabbatarian Christians, and we'll talk about some of those groups, what they might be. But also, Islam also observes a Sabbath quite consciously. And does so knowing that there are these other Sabbaths, Jewish Sabbath and Christian Sabbath as well. Well, the name Sabbath comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, and it is really starts and it's understood as a time for rest and relaxation and family gathering in home. This is where it begins in the rabbinic tradition, and this day then was observed in gathering places, temples and shrines and stuff. But that was primarily for the Pharisees and the teachers and scribes and such. It wasn't a gathering. It wasn't so much a gathering point, the synagogues and such for people. It was more the homes were the place where people gathered, and literally to carry out that rest and relaxation and the bonding time that comes with being together with family. The Jewish Shabbat or Sabbath starts at sundown on Friday, and it lasts to sundown on Saturday, and it's evolved depending on the tradition or the culture to include all sorts of activities. Many of them centered on a gathering place, a synagogue, and such. The Christian concept of Sabbath is divided between an Eastern rite, which primarily observes the Sabbath on Saturday, Eastern Orthodox, and the Western rite, Western Christianity, Catholicism, and Protestantism, as we know it, which observe it on Sunday. And in that sense, we are first day Protestants. Okay, we celebrate our Sabbath not on the seventh day, but on the first day of the week, on Sunday. And in various traditions, this meant a number of things. In the very, very strict Reformed tradition, not only was it a time for worship and gathering, but there was no recreation allowed. whereas in what was known later as the continental observance, there was rest, there was worship, and there was recreation allowed as well in this. There are also groups of Christians that observe not the first day of the week, but the seventh day of the week. And of course, we mostly know them as Seventh Day Adventists. They rest and they worship on that day. There are also very small numbers called New Moon Christians who celebrate a Sabbath, and they do so following a lunar calendar. These are primarily Pentecostal or Messianic groups or sects, and they again follow a lunar calendar rather than a traditional calendar. There's also, whether you're aware of it or not, Muslims observe what is a Friday Sabbath as such. They recognize, by the way, traditional Muslim and the Quran recognizes, and teaching recognizes, that there is a Sabbath that Jews observe from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Their call for prayer is at noon or high noon or high part of the day on Friday. And as such then, Friday, the whole of Friday becomes a rest day, a Sabbath day, if you will, for them as well. And then there are also groups of Christians called Samaritanism, that observe Friday as well. And they observe a very, very strict form of observance with turning off electrical appliances, all sorts of things. Don't even light candles, or they're very, very have a very, very traditional way of thinking about it. Finally, just a quick note to you about the. Sometimes people say, "Well, is the Sabbath really? Is it just a tradition that the Christians sort of cooked up?" It's interesting to note that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, these documents that were put together by a group, a very spiritual group, the Essene sect, they were put together around or even before the time of Jesus. Where already there are mentions of a Sabbath there, and a way that it is observed. And along with that, there's a lot of contemporary people now who observe a Sabbath, but they would say that it's a spiritual Sabbath. In other words, they have a special time that they observe for a special time that they observe in worship with others, but it's not circumscribed by one particular authority or group or leaders. So in other words, it might be very, very personal. It might be just their family, but they observe a Sabbath nonetheless, and they might also have other different ways of observing a Sabbath by, for instance, unplugging from all of the electronic stuff that they have, so there's not that distraction in their life, or refraining from certain eating habits or drinking alcohol or something as a way of observing time apart. To focus on God. Well, you probably have some parts of your Sabbath which are observed with us here at Glenwood Lutheran Church, but you may also have other ways of observing the Sabbath, a day to the Lord. We want to encourage you in those as well, because after all, in the end, our goal is to make our whole life something which magnifies and glorifies God.